Hogstye.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Hogsty. I hope you all had a nice Christmas, filled your bellies with some nice turkey or maybe a ham. I don't know what you eat. Maybe some nice beef roast of some kind. There's a lot of things. Christmas doesn't have like as traditional food like you have to eat this, right? Like
We
you
had
can do.
fajitas.
Yeah, you had fajitas.
We had fajitas as per request.
Oh, nice. We did that
But
in my family one year because my grandmother requested it too.
but I would like to say it's just you have to get it right. It's not a nice Christmas. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas.
Merry
Well,
Christmas, yes.
in past tense, a nice Christmas is still proper.
No, it's not. Say it with me. Say it with me. Merry Christmas.
Happy
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
No, you're getting
Merry
it wrong.
Christmas. There is
Steve and I are
nobody
gonna
that
go
says
after
Merry
each other.
Christmas.
If we're still doing this by February, everybody, you can write in and complain.
It's gonna be every show for 2 months.
Well, and we got a Happy New Year coming up for everybody too.
It is a
So,
Happy New Year. Now, Happy New Year is like my least favorite holiday of the year. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I've never gotten into it. I'm not a party person. First of all, that's part of it.
But
Um,
that's probably one reason. Another reason is a lot of alcohol gets drunk on there is another reason.
Yeah, that's
And
another
three, a
reason.
variety of different great tasting foods you don't want. That's strike three. I can see why you don't like it.
But and I also don't really want to be. Like Alex knows this, because I said
Right.
it before. Nothing good happens after midnight.
right.
And
That
so
is true.
yeah, and so it's like the most dangerous day of the year. After midnight on New Year's Eve somewhere, I do not want to be anywhere but at home.
So-
It's just not my scene. It's like
Yeah,
it's the extrovert's dream. It's not my scene.
As we are now getting old, my wife and her friend decided that we're gonna have them over just for dinner on New Year. Not like a party, but just some people over. The plan is instead of waiting until midnight here, we're gonna do New Year's Zulu time, and we're just gonna watch Big Ben and the fireworks
That's
in
great.
London.
I
and-
love it.
And everyone goes to bed by 9.
Zulu time, New Year's. I love it.
Now, Steve, now stop me if you haven't heard this before. On base, every year, like clockwork, there's always multiple cars after midnight, pulled over to the side, giving breathalyzer tests, and always at least minimum one DUI potential Article 15 being handed out because someone drove on base piss poor drunk.
Absolutely.
Not just tipsy, not just a little. No, I'm just absolutely car swerving, almost hitting either the barriers or even the actual MP or SP, whichever military branch you're in.
I assume it's more
Coming
than
in.
one.
Oh no, I'm being generous on the low side right there, but trust me, there have been.
And the military police or the security forces are brutal on this. They do not let anybody go. Don't
Nope.
ever think that if you're like a young enlisted person who's new to this, do not think you're going to talk your way out of it because they won't. You'll get an Article 15. Your career will be over in a heartbeat.
So
And,
don't
I mean,
F
it's a-
around and find out.
No,
Oh, yeah,
God,
no,
no.
do not.
It's the highlight of their year. I swear
Speaking
some of
as-
them look forward to the New Year's.
I have bailed people out of jail. I've gotten people out of the military jail for DUIs. Many times when they call me and say your troop got busted at the front gate. I have done this. I've been forced to do this many times. I've let people stay in jail because I did not feel like going there at 2 a.m. and getting them.
Right. In fact,
I mean-
my wife hates driving at night because she's had our time seeing. She thought I actually had one too many when we were out one time, which I didn't think I did. But when we got near the base, she told me to pull over, and she drove us on base because she was that paranoid about it.
See, I got I got a call. Story time. This goes all the way back to like 96. I was like a lieutenant, and I was the guy who got all the calls for the people who get arrested, and so I developed like this sixth sense. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. And sure enough, it does. So then I have a guy who is not in jail at my base in D.C. He's in the Washington D.C. District of Columbia jail.
Oh, the one
Yeah.
by RFK Stadium.
I don't know where the hell it is because I didn't go get him. So he got arrested for carjacking someone in a parking lot of a grocery store at like 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning or something. And it all turned out to be a drunken mistake. But when you call me, the police call me and say you need to come down to the District of Columbia jail to pick up someone who carjacked, that's a big no, Kemosabe, for me. So I let him rot all night until they transported him to Bolling Air Force Base.
I don't blame you, because in
Not doing that.
1996, you did not want to go to that neighborhood
No,
at 2 in the
no.
morning.
Especially not without a security detail. You
No.
know?
No. Although you could have made a very fun show of it if you really wanted to. With
I did not.
You would have had 2 equally angry MPs with you, I'd think.
Well, they're not going to do it. No, they wouldn't do it. They eventually went and got him. I did make him
Right.
go get him eventually, but
Right. Yeah. That's like serious trouble.
it was also what happened was the guy was very drunk and stumbled through the parking lot of a grocery store directly into a car occupied by an elderly woman who was terrified and thought she was being carjacked. So she called the police, and this guy was so out of it that he didn't know how to explain it. So they arrested him for carjacking and just hauled him off to jail.
Got it.
And he ended up being found not guilty of that, but he still greatly irritated me out of the whole thing.
I would be very upset if I were you too.
Yeah. But I remember he was the one. Dave can appreciate this. We had a unit, like a summer like picnic or whatever, like a unit party, and we had a dunk tank there, and I had to be an occupant of the dunk tank, and that guy paid the most to throw the dunk tank thing at me. That guy who I let rot in jail and then took 2 stripes.
Because that was his
Oh,
Well, he got in trouble a second time for a similar thing. So we took 1 the first time and then 1 the second time. So
I've definitely been in those shoes. Not in the dunk tank, but spending money to dunk somebody. Absolutely.
story.
And you know what? And it wasn't even an officer. It was our chief. That's who.
But
I
that fits too. Yeah, I get it.
Yes. So
I just heard, Dave. I heard from my first chief master sergeant from that era just 2 days ago out of the clear blue skies. Retired, looks like a mountain man now.
nice.
Big old beard.
Mm.
Lives in
That's
Atlanta.
awesome.
Yep.
I mean, that is the look down south now, the big old mountain man look, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're in Atlanta, which doesn't have mountains.
Well, he happens to be an African American, so he doesn't fit the traditional like mountain man stereotype. He just
gotcha.
has the beard, you know.
Gotcha.
He looks more like, I don't know, retired boxer or something, you know, because he's like really bulky, you know, really big dude. Yeah.
Right.
It's a good look if you can pull it off.
Yeah, I cannot pull it off.
No, none of us can pull that look off.
That guy can. That chief master sergeant can pull it off.
Oh, all right. Speaking of guys who need to retire, should we talk about this game and Ron
Yes,
Rivera?
we should. Of course, we should.
Yeah. Okay. So that happened on New Year's Eve. I didn't watch it live. Did anyone watch?
Oh
it?
yeah, I watched most of it live. I missed about
really?
a quarter of it. Yeah, and I didn't go back and
I
watch.
told my family, you know what? You guys mean more to me than watching this game. That's going to make me upset either way.
Well, that was a period. That particular date was on. I had some free time before things got started, so I watched a good bit of it. Okay, so
I had it in the corner of the room on a laptop while I was with my grandson. So I did
okay.
Nice.
But everybody gets to hear the stats because I just think it's funny. So
They're very sad stats.
yeah, okay. So quarterback number 1 was Sam Howell. He was 6 for 22 for 56 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 1.7. For those of you paying attention, Jacoby Brissett was quarterback number 2. He was much better, 10 for 13, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, quarterback rating of 123.9.
Mm-hmm.
Leading rusher was Chris Rodriguez, 10 carries, 58 yards. That's 5.8 yards per carry for those paying attention. Antonio Gibson, 9 for 30. Leading receiver was Terry McLaurin, 3 for 50. Logan Thomas was 5 for 36. And so for the math deficient, that is 143 net yards passing and 102 yards total yards rushing. We are playing the Trustway game today.
Mm-hmm.
Did Tressway outpunt the entire offense?
I'm going to say no because he had that semi-blocked punt, and that probably hurt.
Okay.
I'm going to say yes because that's how miserable the offense was.
All right. Drum roll, please. Tressway dramatically outpunted the entire offense.
Wow.
He had seven punts for 294 yards, which the total offense was 245 yards. So there you go.
So you said he had that. What was the quarterback rating again? 1.7.
That was Howell's quarterback rating. Yeah.
All right. So I'm doing a quick look here. Do you want to guess if that is the lowest quarterback rating for a quarterback in an NFL game for Washington?
For what? There's got to be someone who had a 0 out there.
Wasn't there someone who actually got a negative? And I want to say it was Mark
No, you
Sanchez.
can't get a negative.
That's not.
I thought you can because if you throw so many interceptions, you can actually get just into the negative side.
It turns into a 0.
Yeah. I think it just gets recalculated at 0 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no, though. I don't know the answer to this. It's a good trivia question, but I'm just going to guess that somebody had a 0 out there.
You are correct. There was 1-0. It is Tim Hasselbeck in 2003, Washington versus Dallas. 6 for 26, 56 yards. Hey, that's a coincidence. A sack and 4 interceptions for Tim Hasselbeck that day. That is the all-time low. Washington actually has another one worse than that. Norm Snead, Washington versus Baltimore.
Wow.
Had a 0.5 rating.
You're going back to
0.5's worse than a 0 somehow.
You're going back to like our buddy Nolan from Tampa's time with Norm Snead.
Yeah, 1961. Yeah. So only the third worst quarterback performance, I think, in team history there. Congratulations.
Look, it's fun to laugh at, but the dude looked totally lost.
I don't know how he's looked shell-shocked for a month.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Absolutely.
That's a good adjective to use. And he's not getting sacked nearly as much as he did either. The guy is just completely not there anymore. Right. I mean, what Jacoby Brissett came in and looked like Peyton Manning compared to Howell immediately, and he's done it 2 weeks in a row. I think this is the bottom for Howell. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to be like this at all times, but I don't think he's good enough, and I never have, or consistent enough to be a franchise quarterback. I think that's what I've learned out of this experience. The offense looks dramatically better with Jacoby Brissett in there, and we haven't, studied enough of the film to know specifically why, except that he makes better decisions. They're crisp. It goes quick, and there's not indecisive. He's just a much better quarterback.
I think speed is a huge factor in this. That probably, it comes with being an 8-year vet versus a guy in your second year, right? Like those do factor in those types of things. I hear you that, like, I don't blame anyone who looks at Howell and says he's not a franchise quarterback anymore. Like, this is not going to be his trajectory. I always, and I said it early on, I need to see a guy for like 30 games to really know what he's going to be. I don't think you necessarily give everybody 30 games. Some guys you can tell right away, but like, you've seen enough good. Hal gave 10 good games early in the season for the most part.
They were okay.
Yeah. Okay, fine. If you want to just say okay.
Yeah.
We saw, like, with Kirk Cousins, it took him 3 years to figure it out. We've seen that with other quarterbacks too. Look at Smith out in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was a complete bust early on in his career.
He had multiple years. I do think a lot of it's situational, and certainly, like, Ron Rivera's been
not helpful.
No. That's, I guess, the best way to say it. In many ways, Eric Bieniemy put him in a really bad position. Eric Bieniemy needs to go. You can't just throw a dude out there and let him pass a million times a game with
Right.
no
This
running
isn't
game,
arena football.
terrible offensive line. It's not like 7-on-7 football in the park, So I
Mhm.
think they're all to blame, but all the same, I don't know. I've seen enough.
The one thing that I wrote about and spoke about in the off season and the early part of the year about Sam Howell is that Sam Howell has, I know you say it's about every quarterback, but some quarterbacks more so than most. You have got to have the right pieces around him, and part of that is protection. You saw that in North Carolina. I mean, in North Carolina, he had a sack problem anyway. But when he lost all that talent around him, and his offensive line was kind of shown for the weaknesses that they had because there was nothing around him anymore, and he lost a couple to the pros. He didn't have the time to go through his progressions, and his progressions were already naturally inconsistent and or slow to begin with anyway. He just doesn't process the field as quick as you like to see him do it. Now in the NFL, you're seeing that even translate even worse. And when you have Ron Rivera's gross negligence on the offensive line, he set him up for failure. He brings in an offensive coordinator who earlier in the year just wants to run all these long developing plays, thinking that, well, I'm going to get the ball downfield to my speedy receivers. Well, he has no time to let the routes develop. He's getting hit, he's
Right.
getting nailed. And now, during the course of the year, when they start institute a quicker passing game, we're going to throw it at a 67% clip most of the time. You're not even setting up the pass for the run when you're with the run, and you're constantly leaving a guy who is not bred to be a true franchise quarterback to begin with. You got to give him the right pieces around him. He should have at least 2 years to even learn the speed of the NFL. That's what I realized this year.
Yep.
And then it's everything all just kind of caved in at once. And just like what Alex said earlier, he's shell shocked now. There's no good on putting him back out in the field except for just losing the next 2 games because you're not going to get anything out of him
Right.
except for more loss of confidence. And I blame
Even if
all that
you're
on
one
Ron
of these
Rivera.
people who thinks he could be a franchise quarterback, I wouldn't want him out there. I
No.
would imagine. I don't think it helps him develop at this point to keep going out there. We've been focusing on Hal. I think everyone's gotten so hyper focused on Sam Howell. People also have to acknowledge that the whole offense has looked sloppy the last month too.
Oh,
It's
terrible.
not just him.
Absolutely.
Like in this game, his first interception, that ball hit Logan Thomas in the perfect spot, right in front of his face. Both hands touch it, tip ball, interception.
You want to know
He
something though? If you look at what Jacoby Brissett did, he scored points in 5 of 7 drives.
Oh, absolutely, I get that.
They looked much sharper just because the guy's in there. He's brought these people up.
Yeah, I think it helps that he's not been rattled.
Yeah.
So that's probably settling down the rest of the offense. And Jacoby is not an improviser. He is a drop back in the pocket and throw it guy, which, Eric Denomy's obsession with the improvising quarterback thing, I think, has hurt Sam Howell quite a bit.
Here's what I see. I've never liked the term franchise quarterback because I don't really know what it means.
Mhm.
It's like this vague, it's like the Supreme Court's definition of pornography. You know it when you see it. That's
right.
kind of what it is. So the where I've kind of arrived on what a franchise quarterback is, I guess, is whether the quarterback makes people better or whether he requires better people around him.
Sure.
That's like franchise quarterback, not a franchise quarterback. And to me, what I've seen enough of is to think that Sam Howell cannot lift up people around him. We saw it at North Carolina. Same exact thing happened. We had a great year with a bunch of talent around him. De'Ami Brown leaves, a bunch of other guys. All of a sudden, he's not good. And here in D.C., kind of the same thing happens. Chaos happens. Like we said it last week, like when Troy Aikman was a rookie, the team was bad and all that, but you just kind of saw something in him. Peyton Manning, same thing, lots of others. Joe Theismann made a bunch of ragamuffins. You turned them into Super Bowl champions, and that's maybe not fair to the Hogs, but you get my point. And I don't think I see that. I don't think I'm going to see that with Sam Howell. So if it were me, especially if they end up with like the 3rd round pick, and we're going to get into this because Dave wrote a whole column about it.
Yeah.
I would jump on it in a heartbeat. Quarterback.
Well, I mean, we're going to be talking about that today.
Yeah,
we're
we'll
going to
get
be
to
talking
that.
about that
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
On this game though, I mean, I was up in New York. It wasn't that wet. I don't know why the ball was so slick this whole game, because there were a lot of drops. That weird fumble that Jameson Crowder had, where the ball just like squirted right straight up in the air as he was like running with it.
No contact at all. Yep.
Yeah, very strange. And the Jets even had a ball control issues. So I don't know what was going on. I was 10 miles away in Queens when they're in New Jersey.
Oh, sorry to hear that, Alex.
Yeah.
Queens, my goodness.
I'd rather be in Queens than New Jersey. Just as a
Well, that's
general
true.
rule.
It's kind of the least worst option there.
Yeah, it's not the least worst. But like if you're going 5 boroughs plus New Jersey, it's
Well,
somewhere
of the
in
2 options,
Yeah,
maybe
oh,
you
yeah,
take
yeah.
Queens rather than Jersey is what I'm saying.
And I take both over Staten Island, just for the record.
I've never been in Staten Island for a reason.
No one has. Even the people who live there have no reason to be there.
Actually, Queens isn't that bad. That's where my mother-in-law lived before she moved out to Las Vegas.
Was your mother-in-law a gangbanger?
Was she?
Queens, that's not Queens. That's more Brooklyn, Bronx.
Oh, okay. Fair
yeah.
enough. Maybe so.
Queens is immigrants and Italians.
Yes, they are.
Hence Dave. Italian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so we'll get to Howell. What else in the game? I'd like to point out Chris Rodriguez, once again, 5.8 yards per carry. And even if you take away the, he had the one long run, 16 carries or 16 yards, that leaves him 9 for 42 for his other, which is just.
Now he's hurt, right? He got hurt.
Well, I have the injury report for next week. And on this injury report is Chris Rodriguez, ankle.
Okay.
So the injury report for this coming week is Jonathan Allen, the DNPs, Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller, Veterans Rest, Tyler Larson, Charles Leonard, Ridgeway, Chris Rodriguez, Benjamin St. Juste, all DNP on Wednesday for a variety of things. St. Juste has a concussion. Percy Butler, Brian Robinson, Andrew Wiley were limited, and then Harris and Mayo were full practice. And so that's injuries.
Okay.
So yeah, he is. So he's hurt. But my point is, I think the dude is the best running back on this team.
He's a good quality running back. I don't think he's a feature back, but he can be part of any staple or any rotation.
Absolutely.
And I think he could be a feature back.
I
think he could. We haven't seen it yet, but
yeah,
if he's capable of catching the ball, yeah, sure. But if he's not a receiving type back, then he's not really a true feature back. I mean, we don't have many of them in the league. I get that, but
okay,
still,
fair enough. Maybe I'd have revised. I think he could be the principal running back on a team. I don't know if he can catch a ball or not. You're right, but I think he could be the principal running back on an NFL team.
Basically, the role that we've had Brian Robinson in this year.
Yes.
Where you're getting 51% of the carries, kind of.
Right.
Thing.
That's what I think he can do.
Sure.
And you put him someone like a Chris Thompson type of guy. I mean, that's a great 1-2 punch right there. Because even Chris Thompson, he was never a between a tackle runner, but he was capable of doing so. But he was a massive receiving threat when he was healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, they've been trying to build that kind of duo here for years. Jay Gruden wanted to build it. Ron Rivera's tried to build it. They just haven't had luck in having both guys be productive.
Right.
Chris Thompson was productive. We didn't have a good power back. J.D. McKissick was productive. Still no good power back with him.
Right.
This is probably the closest we've had to that, where it's Gibson and Robinson, Gibson and now Rodriguez.
But I don't think Gibson at the end of the day really has it to be that. Gibson has a lot of talent in some ways, but I don't think he's a feature, primary / feature back.
No, he's not.
No. No, well, and we're talking about that receiving back role, which is what he should have been. Why they didn't try to use him in that right away, I'll never understand.
Because the coaches are idiots. That's why.
Well, oh, right. Thank you for reminding.
Transition.
Yeah,
Oh, by the way, what I didn't go over is defensive stats. I'm not going to read all these, but Khalil Hudson, second week in a row,
right.
leads team in tackles, 15 tackles. So congrats to him. And there were no sacks. The other guy had a ton of tackles, was Cody Barton at 10. But Khalil Hudson, 15 tackles, 8 solo.
And Barton had a pick too, right? Yeah.
Yes, Barton. Let's see, who had the pick?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Barton.
Barton had the pick. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just standing in the right place at the right time.
Yep. But that's kind of what he does. Stands in places.
Pretty much.
His great talent.
His name is Stand in Place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, there's not a whole lot you can say about a game like this, right? Like, no one had impressive numbers offensively.
What you can say about it, Alex, is that Jacoby Brissett brought them all the way back, and it certainly
they had the lead. They could have won this.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to be fair and say, the Jets probably turned it off a little bit defensively, because why wouldn't they? And that's
Right.
fair. But the dude still got it done. That's what I think you take away from this game. How much better the offense looked.
Oh yeah,
Jacoby Brissett is just, well, he exemplifies exactly the poor mismanagement of this roster Ron Rivera's had over the years, especially this year, because it was very clear, and you said it from the offseason and going into week 1, Steve, that if they had the proper quarterback competition, there was a really good chance that Brissett probably might have won that job. And this offense probably would have been much, much better going through this year. I mean, granted, defense was still abysmal. I get that and everything, but still, I mean, then you're probably looking at like a 16th overall pick again, because they probably still wouldn't have made the playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that he didn't give his best players the opportunity to earn that starting role. And I think Khalil Hudson is showing he's another aspect of that mismanagement, because he probably should have been in there from week 1, because he seems to be a heck of a lot better than what Cody Barton has been all year long.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the problem is Hudson's in there to replace Davis, because they can't conceptualize, oh, let's use multiple guys who might do the same thing, but
right.
I mean, weak side linebackers, then Barton in the middle. God forbid they ever think of that.
But still, you had that whole Buffalo nickel thing he always harped so much about.
Right.
I mean, Khalil Hudson fit that perfectly.
Yeah.
And he didn't play him in that position all year.
They drafted him to do it. That's the irony.
Right.
So the one other thought, oh shoot, now I forgot what I was going to say about Jacoby Brissett. And you mentioned him. If he had started the year with as bad as the O-line was at that first, 5-6 games, let's say. I know Hal took a ton of sacks. Brissett's not mobile. Like, he can run a little, but he's not even as mobile as Hal. He would have been taking even more sacks, I think.
I don't know, because I think he would have gotten rid. Because I think he would have gotten rid of the ball quicker. I think he would have been more apt to take the check downs. I think he would have been more apt to calling and recognizing the pressures up front before the snap and calling the proper audibles.
Maybe on that part, but the offense the first couple months didn't have checkdowns. This was everyone go deep and throw the ball offense.
Well, I think with Brissett, I think Bieniemy would have given him a little more leverage or leeway to make adjustments at the line and calls and audibles at the line, to where I think he would have called, and he would have called him out of a lot of those plays when he would have recognized certain pressures. Hal, I don't think, had that luxury to do that. That's my opinion, but
yeah. No, I think you're right. I was about to say the same thing. I mean, because Sam Howell caused a lot of those sacks. Yes, the offensive line sucks and it's terrible, but he caused a lot of those sacks. And I mean, Derek Bieniemy didn't do anybody any favors. I'm not saying they would have had 5 sacks on the year or anything. It would have been a lot of sacks, but I think it would have been less with Jacoby under center for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I will. Well, I mean, one thing that will be interesting to see with him now that we're going to get, he's going to be the starter. They announced that today, obviously. Is how does he do against a team like San Francisco when they're planning for him, not Sam Howell? Like that's going to be very interesting to watch in my mind. Is just because you attack those two differently. With Sam
Yeah.
Howell, you just need to get some pressure up the middle to rattle him and get him, to try to run outside the pocket. I don't. I think Jacoby Brissett, since he is more of a pocket guy, it's going to be more traditional attack the edges kind of thing. Would be my guess. So I'll be curious about that part. And
And then
anything on
after
the
San Francisco,
defense?
and after seeing San Francisco come off that brutal loss to Baltimore, yeah, they're definitely going to be fired up and ready to go in this game.
Yeah,
I'm
they're not
sure.
going to lose a second game in a row, especially to one of the dregs of the NFL.
Yeah, I would assume that's how they're going to be approaching it. Not to mention, we all know how Kyle Shanahan still has like a axe to grind against Washington.
And
For
and the other thing is,
Chase.
I mean, this is Trent. Well, it's Trent Williams
Mhm.
homecoming too. I don't think Chase Young is going to be mad enough at Washington to care that much, but Trent Williams is the dude who holds a grudge, I think.
Yeah, but he this isn't the first time he's played
I
Washington.
think no, but it's the first time he's been back at FedEx.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it is. He has played Washington, but
Yeah.
yeah, I certainly think Chase Young would probably love to get a sack, obviously. But
He would have to, put some effort in. I don't know. Uh
he'd have
yeah.
to stop looking at himself in the mirror, perhaps. Right?
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe find a shirt that fits. I don't know. I don't know if that'll help. But he should do that anyway. The poor man can never seem to find fitting shirts. When you see him
Maybe you
in
need to help
practice.
be his stylist, Alex. That looks like it's a job up your alley.
Yeah. Stop dressing like you're in an 80s jazzercise video. That's my advice to all these young men who I see these days.
You say an '80s jazzercise video?
Yeah, you don't notice that everyone's wearing crop tops and short shorts again. I'm like,
I don't know what you're looking at, Alex, but no,
I'm
I've
watching
not
training
noticed
camps. It's very
men who
disturbing.
wear crop tops. No, I have not noticed that.
I haven't noticed that myself either. So
It's how they dress when they're practicing. It's very disturbing.
I was thinking maybe you're walking through the city too much lately.
No, you don't see that in the city. That's the weird part. It's only NFL players doing this. It's very strange.
Right.
I'd expect it if I was in like Brooklyn. uh, Anything on the defense that that stood out to you guys in this Jets game?
Well, I mean, what we've said over and over and over again, which is multiple coverage busts.
Yeah,
I'm almost tired of saying it. We say it every
sure.
damn week. But that was, I think what we already said also was that, Khaleke Hudson has made the linebackers look passable as compared to what's gone, prior at least. So
I would hope that whoever the new general manager is like takes a look at him and considers bringing him back because I know this is his last year. So
I think he has a role in the NFL as a starter on a defense.
yeah. Yeah,
But,
or at the very least, that fourth linebacker, who's
Right.
like coming in and filling in more. It should not have taken 4 seasons for Ron Rivera to actually use him. But that's Ron Rivera being Ron Rivera.
yeah.
Yes.
But other than that, I don't have. I mean,
Yeah.
what can you say? What we haven't already said a million times. You know.
No. It's the same. I mean, it's a broken record with this defense and this team. So, all right. So, I guess talking about the 49ers, because we were talking about them a little, even with the change, I assume we're all saying this is a fait complete, that this is not a winnable game, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more interesting conversation is going to be the draft stuff. So I don't particularly think we got to spend a ton of time on San Francisco. It's kind of pointless, which I assume that's why you're knocking it out now.
Yeah.
34-19 49ers.
I mean, the only thing, if you want hope, with Brissett under center, he's looked dramatically better.
Right.
Mind you, I'm not predicting this, okay? I'm just saying,
No.
If the 49ers look past this game because they're going, oh my God, Washington, we can beat up on them. And Brissett brings a new energy to it. Crazier things have happened than to see a team in those circumstances all of a sudden play well out of the blue.
Yeah.
Especially since there's a ton of film on Brissett, but they haven't seen it this year.
Right.
So that
Sure.
would be the hope. But the problem is, of course, that Washington's defense is atrocious and they can't stop San Francisco. And no matter how good Brissett is, it's not going to be as good as the 49ers offense. So
Right.
I agree with you. It's probably no chance, but it's possible that this might be a closer game than people think. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I've heard people say this listening to sports radio the last few days. If they somehow screw this up and beat the Niners and the Cowboys and lose their draft position, like the only thing you have going for you is like you're going to have good draft position in a quarterback draft. Like a quarterback.
I think the fans would revolt, is what I think.
They would burn down Ron Rivera's house, is what might happen.
Let's not encourage that.
I'm not encouraging it. I'm just saying they'll be that angry.
You're stating a fact.
I'm stating a analogy of how angry people will be.
I don't think that's an analogy. I think people might literally try to hunt him down.
I'd hope not. I don't advocate murder.
No, definitely not, or attempted murder or anything. No.
Right. But yeah, don't do it, guys. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I would.
I'm talking to the team there, by the way. Don't win.
I would subscribe to what you had talked about with a little bit of hope like that, Steve, if San Francisco didn't get bludgeoned by a potential Super Bowl matchup on the other end, obviously with the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, they're coming into this week with a statement to make against one of the worst teams in the league. And there is absolutely no way Kyle Shanahan allows this team to look past Washington in any way. Trent Williams will make sure they don't look past them.
Yeah.
Chase Young will help that. Kyle Shanahan certainly won't let it happen. It's going to be a bloodbath. There's not going to be any chance. I get what you're saying, Steve. And yeah, if you give any hope to anybody, sure, I get that. But if they beat the Ravens or even shut out the Ravens the week prior, I'd probably give that a little more credence on that. But
I think I agree with you more than I agree with myself. I'm just saying I'm not, and again, I wasn't predicting that. I'm just saying I think it's not beyond the realm of possible. But since we have to say something about this game, I thought there were three pretty interesting matchups here, so we'll go over this. I mean, I could make up some game plan stuff, but we all know what's probably going to happen. Right. I mean, and the game plan to win, again, is like if Jacoby Brissett changes the tenor of the offense entirely, that's how you win.
Somehow he lights it up for 400 yards.
Right,
sure.
yeah.
Right.
So I think there are three of them. One is interesting matchups. Brandon Ayuk. So I think this is probably a Kendall Fuller matchup. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Brandon Ayuk is, by some measures, the number one receiver in the NFL statistically, averaging 18.5 yards per reception. He's already has over 1,000. He had over 1,000 yards last week.
Yeah.
So the dude has been lighting everybody up. And so can Kendall Fuller hang with him? No. But that's an interesting one to watch. Casey Toole, I think it's going to be Casey Toole and Trent Williams, just based on lineups. Trent Williams versus anybody is going to be like the TV announcers will be all over it, I would assume, because it's Trent Williams in Washington. Right. That's one to watch. But I think the most interesting one to watch, the most competitive one, may be Nick Bosa and Charles Leno. Think about that matchup in the intro. That's pretty scary.
If Leno's healthy enough to play.
You're right.
Yeah.
Which is not. But you got an all-pro on a track to be considered as a Hall of Fame player if he keeps it up for another 10 years versus a dude who is an average Joe that has the potential to go horribly wrong, as does Brandon Ayuk and Kendall Fuller. So I think those are the matchups to watch.
I mean, there's not a single matchup in this game where you're like, well, this will favor Washington necessarily. Like, you could go across the board. I don't think there's any particular spot where we have an advantage against San Francisco. I know we have Terry McLaurin. Great. San Francisco's got one of the best defenses in the league, period. Like, there's no one Terry McLaurin's going to take advantage of in that defense, I don't think.
No.
So like he'll get his, but I don't think he'll, like that's not what you can hang your hat on. Yeah, the matchups don't favor Washington, even with the quarterback change. Yeah. Dave, you already shouted your score.
Well, actually, real quick, I'll give an over under of 121.5 yards. Tress Way will have either you go have more or just under in terms of what the total offense will
The
be.
Tressway game. You're laying an over and under.
Laying an
for the
over
Tressway
under for
game.
Tress again this week.
Do you
was
think
it,
Tressway will have
125?
over 125 yards more than the offense?
No, 121.5. Always had to add that half one in there.
Well,
Okay.
I think the over and under ought to be higher because he was 150 yards. No, he was at 50 yards more for against the Jets, and so I think it could be. I think it could be worse. So I guess what I'm saying is I'll go over on it.
You think over?
Yeah.
I would still think under. It's not that easy to get over 100 yards punting more than your offense puts up.
Right.
Listen, Tress has done it.
He has, but
it takes a special kind of incompetence to do it. I granted, but
given the idiocy we saw on special teams last week and this week, like I don't have a lot of confidence in the guys around Tress right now either. We finally fixed the long snapper. Apparently now we need to get a whole new blocking setup for him. He had like one blocked and two more looks like they were blocked versus the Jets. So, yeah, I have not a lot of confidence there. All right, so quick score for me. I'm gonna guess like 35-14 kind of thing. Like
I'm in that ballpark somewhere too.
Yeah.
To be different, I'll say
36.
I'll say 36-17 because I think Jacoby Brissett will not look terrible.
Sure,
Yeah, he'll move the offense. Sure.
He'll be functional hopefully until he gets hurt because they can't block for him.
And then they'll be right back with Sam Howell again.
Yep.
Oh, they'll bring up the savior Jake Fromm, right?
Yeah.
Well, they will know though. They'd have to activate him. So.
Right.
Yeah. So Brissett and Howell would have to get hurt to see Jake Fromm. Yeah. But then he could come in as that emergency third rule. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about Rivera's comments about the benching, where he says it's not over for Sam Howell. Like this is, they're trying to basically preserve him because they don't think that he's being helped. Ron, you're like 2 months too late for this. You should have done this, like I said, versus Buffalo. You should have done it versus New York. You should, there were multiple times you should have pulled him because he obviously was not going to benefit from getting his butt kicked in certain games.
Well, okay, so is this just Ron Rivera speak or is it over? I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Because Ron Rivera's being nice and he doesn't want to go out there and he's not Jay Gruden. He's going to try to be nice to these players and be,
right.
Let them down easy. So he's going to go, this doesn't change my opinion. I listen to some of these comments. It's not going to change my opinion of the quarterback. And, he's gotten beat down a little bit and blah, blah, blah. I mean, is it freaking over or not? That's the real question because Ron is not going to say it.
I mean, everything's over for Ron. What does he even care?
I just think his choice of comments and how he worded it was it's frustrating because these are the kind of comments you say earlier in the year trying to save your season and save your quarterback. That's not something you say with 2 weeks left in the season with nothing to play for. Just come out and say, Sam Howell's been beaten, he's been battered, Jacoby Brissett moves the ball better, and I'm just going with him from the next two games, try to salvage something in the season, and that's it, done. That's all you need to say. You don't have to say anything beyond that.
Why I think it's weird? I don't care what Ron Rivera thinks about saving Sam Howell's career. Ron is not going to be here.
Sure.
Sam, for, whatever you think he might have in terms of the starter thing, and we'll talk about, your column, Dave, that you wrote, but Sam will probably be here. Just, he's on a cheap contract. He makes sense as a backup, even if you draft somebody. Ron.
Does he make sense as a backup, though?
Financially.
Do you really want financially, but do you really want Sam Howell to back up your prize rookie? Or do you want a Jacoby Brissett type guy to back up your prize rookie?
I mean, I might want both. We'll see what
Maybe.
Jacoby does this next year because you need 3. Let's be honest. I mean, we know that you always
And
want.
they've
3.
got Jake Fromm.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Right. But regardless, it's 1,000% certainty that Ron will not be here come January 9th. Like he will be said, thank you very much. Take your stuff and get out.
Yeah, he'll be called. He'll be part of what they call the Black Monday, right?
Yes, he will absolutely be on Black Monday. Let go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They might be nicer to him than they have been to some coaches. Some guys they tell him to come in at like 5 a.m. to clear their stuff out. Maybe they'll give him like a 9 o'clock call time. Let him sleep in.
So what's the consensus here, though? I mean, is the consensus that Ron was being Ron, coach speak, and it's over, or what?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I only don't think so because I think Ron's head is so far gone. I don't think he even knows if he's coach speaking or not. I think he's just mentally completely out of this thing at this point.
Dylan, I think he went up there and he doesn't want to hurt the guy anymore. He's already getting benched. He's want to get up there and, berate him in public or anything. So he says something, some platitudes, it's partly my fault. We're all at fault. Everybody played bad. He's got beat down. I just think that's just blah, blah, blah. Charlie Brown's teacher, blah, 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 blah.
It largely is. Although it is true, it is a lot of it is on him and the other coaches for.
Oh, yeah.
You did not do a good job setting this thing up for success. Even if you
Washington hasn't set a quarterback up for success since like Mark Rippon.
Well, even there he got so
even
badly
that
hurt.
one. Yeah, true.
Right.
Like you said, Steve, they could write a book, and there's a whole chapter in it of how not to protect your rookies, and it's going to be about Patrick Ramsey and Sam Howell.
And then don't forget about the Dwayne Haskins chapter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rest in peace for them.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Well, that's more going to be the how to jerk a guy around chapter.
So the question becomes what Dave wrote about in his column this week, because what I've noticed, what little I paid attention, to Twitter and whatnot, and it's in the comment section. There's a group of people, Washington fans out there listening right now, who are absolutely dead set on drafting offensive line. It's not so much, there's probably a group of Howell sycophants, but it's more, the argument is more that you have to have an offensive line first before you have a quarterback, and there's no point in drafting a quarterback, if you don't have an offensive line. I do not subscribe to that in any capacity. Dave, your column arrived at that position at the end. To me,
right.
In my head, it was much more decisive. I would never even consider it. If you desperately need a quarterback, and hypothetically Caleb Williams is there, and he's not necessarily there at number 3, but if he was, there's no question I would jump on a quarterback like that and figure out what to do about the offensive line later. If you had a good coach and a good GM, you could deal with it. Just Washington hasn't had that for so long, But there's no question to me that you got to grab the quarterback. If you're in the top 5, I don't know much about Mayo yet.
Position to grab what you think is franchise quarterback. Yeah, I am a build the O-line guy, but yes, if we are now picking 3, and Williams or Mayer almost certainly going to be there, yeah, go for it. Like either one of those, yes. I'm not necessarily sold with the guy from LSU,
Daniels. I haven't watched him yet. We'll get into all that later. Yeah,
but from what everyone says, these 2 guys are like definite top 5 prospect talents. You're not reaching on either of them to draft them.
I think there's question for what I've seen. There were some things I didn't like about Caleb Williams.
The character stuff.
It's character implies like he's had bad conduct. It's more like mental toughness. He's crying to his mom and that guy. So I'd have to see
the
more
nail
of that.
polish stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's little stuff, and there's some immaturity there that could be a concern. I get that. You gotta learn how to lose a little bit in life. But
I know when it comes to my article, I was keeping my sole perspective as much out as possible and trying to walk that line on both sides of the arguments, which is why I took the path that I did. I don't want to look one heavy favorite to another, whatever, because it's a justifiable reason to go with an elite offensive tackle. They go big three
Right.
for that. It's justifiable. I get that. I understand that. But the problem is that over 18-year period, we had two of probably the best left tackles since 2000 in Chris Samuels and Trent Williams. And in that span, we had four first round quarterbacks drafted. And we had between those four, we had a 391 winning percentage. And over that span, they played behind those, not just those left tackles, but also pretty decent to average, or pretty decent to solid offensive line play with Kirk Cousins, who wasn't a first round pick, probably playing in a period of time where the offensive line was probably at its peak at that time. And even then, he was still, I think, he was 26-30-1 in that process. So I get the understanding for people wanting to go and draft the guy that's going to protect your rookie quarterback. When the popular name that comes up is Joe Burrow. Well, Joe Burrow, they invested in the offensive line prior to drafting him, and that's a bit of a misconception on that one too. Because even when you go to Joe Burrow, let's see, they had a total of 5 offensive linemen drafted in 3 previous years prior to Joe Burrow being drafted. Only 1 first-round offensive lineman drafted, who was an offensive tackle, or I'm sorry, he was an offensive guard converted to a tackle, which isn't always an easy transition. And even in that case, the year before they drafted Burrow, they were ranked 31st in the league in overall for offensive line. So even at that, even taking that whole offensive line, well, then how come they didn't take Andrew Thomas and try to shore up an offensive line? They didn't do that. They took Burrow, which was a smart move.
This is all chasing a ghost.
Yeah. I agree.
You can go round and round this circle forever. Washington has gone round and around this circle forever. You got to get the franchise quarterback. And if you have your one opportunity since 2012 to draft in the top 5 and you do not have a quarterback, it would be malpractice to not take that quarterback. Period. Dot. The end. End of story. Yeah. Okay. RG3 didn't work out. Sorry. Right. I mean, I wrote a column 3 years ago now. It was probably my best work I've ever done at the Hogsty. It was a 4-part series. It was a statistical analysis of draft picks. I was really bored for a month, and I spent a ton of time. I went through every draft pick for every team for 20 years and put them all into a huge, giant Excel spreadsheet, which I still have. I may be talked into updating it one of these days. But what it showed, among many other things, was that quarterbacks fall off a cliff after round 1.
Right.
Yeah, and yes, you're gonna name like Dak Prescott and a couple others. I get it. Those are unicorns. There's a whole host of people who have failed. There's a host of first rounders who have failed. It is really, really hard to find a quarterback, and it is really hard to find one that's not at the top, at least in the first round, a worthy first round pick. I'm not talking about like
it is
Jason Campbell.
Such a high fail rate at in every round,
and it goes up to like way higher even in round 2.
Right. So you basically go from a 30% chance at being successful to like a 2% chance.
It's not a 30% chance of being successful.
I'm just just using numbers.
And you guys can. I sent a tweet out about it. That's where Dave, I think it caught your eye. That was my weekly tweet. Yeah, so you can track it down if you want to find it, because to be humble about it, it was a really detailed piece.
I actually tagged part 1 in my article.
Oh, you did? Okay.
The first round, the top 10 picks.
Okay,
so I actually tagged that piece in there. So
yeah,
but it's and the one argument that I will refuse to subscribe to is that Washington hasn't had any luck drafting quarterbacks in the first round. This regime has been terrible. New ownership, new regime coming in. I'm not holding them to the sins of what the past regime was. I refuse to do that. You come in here, you bring in the right pieces, you bring in a GM that says, that's my guy, you go get your guy. If that's Caleb Williams and you have to move up, use a future first round pick like the Texans did to get their guy, and it worked out great for Stroud. And if they want to get up there and get, say, Caleb Williams at number 1 overall, you go up and get him, and let's just roll with it. I mean, it's you have to be able to put together a front office system that, even like when the Eagles drafted Carson Wentz, their offensive line was not very good. It was aged. Jason Peters, the back end of his career at that point, and everything. They drafted Carson Wentz. Their two of the next 3 picks were offensive linemen. And over the next 3 years, they picked 6 offensive linemen. And in the process of that, they picked up Malachi, I think his last name is Jordan Malachi. He was a 7th round rookie or a 7th round tackle who's now their starting anchor on one of the better offensive lines in the league. Why? Because their talent evaluators did their job. Just do your job. Get in here, do your job. It's like Ron Rivera said earlier in the year, do your job. But I'm going to have faith that the new front office is going to be able to do that job.
I'm a little worried that we're quoting Ron Rivera for this.
Ron needs to take his own advice, by the way.
Sure. Yeah. But I was having a little fun with that.
Wouldn't it be funny if all this is for naught and Ron stays?
Then I'll go.
Yeah. I think you would
join me on the dark side, Dave.
No,
that would be a very dark moment. We'd be done.
If Ron Rivera gets an extension, I'll say it right here, right now. Ron Rivera stays, it gets an extension. I'm done.
Podcast over.
That means new ownership. Yeah. Nothing's changed.
Except for those season tickets you just renewed.
I can back out of them.
I'm just
you'll lose your deposit, but yeah.
I haven't put a deposit down yet.
Oh, you
haven't. Deposit doesn't come until next month. After the fact.
After Ron gets his new extension.
That's smart. Yes. The deposit due date should be like 2 days after Black Monday. Yeah, get people feeling happy about stuff, and then demand the money. Look, I'm very pro. Obviously, this O-line needs to be completely rebuilt. If you drafted, let's say you can't get an elite quarterback, and you drafted left tackle in round 1, another tackle in round 2, another guard in round 3, I have no problem with that as a draft strategy going into this year. But if we have a shot at an elite guy, go for it. Like an elite quarterback.
You have to. You can't pass on an elite quarterback because you don't have a tackle.
Right.
Bench the guy. Put the guy on the bench for a year if you have to. But get him drafted. Get him on the roster.
Draft him. Have Sam Howell go out and get his butt kicked for another couple games.
Yeah. You never or whoever. Let's pretend we're over Howell. You get Jake Fromm or Jacoby Brissett out there. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
But don't pass up the quarterback. It's okay if you let a quarterback sit.
Yeah.
I'd let him sit all year long if it meant he was going to be a franchise quarterback.
It might be a good thing.
I think Washington is an ideal situation with that, actually, because I think Brissett would be more than happy to come back knowing that he's going to have all opportunity to be a starter with the rookie sitting behind him going to year 1. Competition, of course. And if he beats him out, that's great. Under a new regime, new coach, everything. And it's more than a competent quarterback in Brissett. I would love to have him for 1 year. Rookie sit for that year, and then, I mean, if you had to, you trade Hal for like a
6
round. Oh, like even like a 6 round pick that's that can be moved up to 5th round depending on performance or whatever. But I think they're in an ideal position to do just that if they really, really wanted to.
Well, so I've said this, and I still think that the ideal situation to me would be you draft a guy, Hal plays a couple games at the start of the year while you figure out what do we need to do to make the offensive line decent? What do we need to do to get these receivers? New regime's going to need to figure out the offense.
Right.
After about a month or so, if Hal's played half decent, maybe you can flip him for something. And it's not a bag of Doritos. Maybe it's a 4th round pick.
But I think it'd be malpractice also to roll into next season with a backup quarterback like Sam Howell. You want a veteran.
I want to flip. I want to flip guys for picks. That's what I want to do.
Who cares? You want to make the first round pick work. You know,
Sure.
make that work. Who cares about getting another 6th-round draft pick? I mean, I would sign up somebody like Jacoby Brissett, somebody along those lines
I wouldn't
to
just
back him
have
up. Forget Sam
Hal.
Howell.
I think that you do need a veteran. And, the one thing Ron Rivera has claimed is that Brissett's been great for teaching Hal. He's been a veteran who's willing to actually sit there with the young quarterback and say, here's what you do, here, like here's how to prep, that kind of. And so you need to find either you keep Jacoby Brissett or you find somebody like him and that can fit that mold. Some guy who's in his like mid 30s. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're gonna be talking a lot about that going forward.
We're gonna have time
Yeah.
Yes, we
yeah.
will.
Some things we want to get through real quick. London Fletcher not going to the Hall of Fame.
this
Bad
year
mistake.
at least.
Yeah, this year he did not make the latest cut, so that's nonsense.
The latest cut is the list of finalists, which
Right.
and for those of you who don't remember, the finalists are announced, or the inductees are announced during the Super Bowl week.
Right.
Yeah.
And Joe Jacoby is now in the senior committee. So how that works is there's a separate nomination for seniors.
Right.
We talked to what's the guy's name, Alex, from the Dallas, the Cowboy reporter.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember.
The name's
his
coming
name.
back. It'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah.
But he told us we talked to
McCain.
him.
Isn't
No.
it McCain?
No, that's from Houston. Give me a second. I'll find
Yeah.
it. But we got him on the phone mainly because it's the only voter who was willing to talk. Rick Gosselin.
Gosselin, that's right.
And we still communicate with him and stuff. And he was the only one that was willing to talk to us from a voter. And what Rick told us is that the senior committee the odds are much less in the senior committee.
Right.
So Jacoby chances aren't good.
Because it's a huge pool of people, and they are only allowed to pick one guy a year.
That's right. I think it's 2 or something. But yeah,
They might have jumped it to 2.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But so Fletcher is not a finalist this year. I think he deserves to be a finalist. But Dave, you sent out a tweet that showed that his statistics are roughly similar to Ray Lewis.
Right. I mean, that's been the argument about Fletcher for years. Is well, if Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher are in, London Fletcher's numbers are the same. He's even more. He had more career success than Brian Urlacher even, which, it would be an argument I would make. Like, London Fletcher has the Super Bowl ring. People forget he was on a Super Bowl winning team early in his career.
Right.
He's got one less than Ray Lewis, I guess, because Lewis got one right at that.
He's still cursed as being on, Washington now.
Yeah. That's the real issue.
Yeah, I mean, and the only difference between Ray Lewis and London Fletcher that throughout their career is
a murder charge.
Oh, that apparently was in his favor, apparently, I guess. but no, it's Ray Lewis is more of a outspoken, more of that vocal leader that you mic up and
he was
that little
bombastic.
dance and yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you can't say London Fletcher was not a leader in that locker room. He absolutely was. He wasn't out there on the field doing what Ray Lewis did, but that's not in terms of just being outward like that. But in terms of production, they were really the same player. They both were not great in coverage, but they knew how to recognize the play and sit into the zone or wherever they needed to be able to be disruptive in that pass play.
Dominating the run, both of them.
And they both dominated the run. They were great against rushing the quarterback. Everything about. It was. Yeah. They were one and the same. It's like, what?
But reputation and personality is. Look, if you counted every criminal act against going in the Hall of Fame, there'd be no Cowboys in there, right? Like, that's
probably
just
true.
A fact of life. All right, so that's unfortunate. And the last thing, Steve, you're going to talk about this more on IJB this week, but you just let us know there was a lawsuit about the former owner of the Washington Redskins, and you want to give like a quick 1-second overview of what that's is about?
Yeah, and I'm not prepared. Well, I'll be more prepared when we get to IJB than I am now because I haven't read the petition yet. So this is just a brief overview. an intro, but one of Daniel Snyder's former minority partners, Robert Rothman, has filed a $75 million lawsuit against Bank of America, and he's alleging that Bank of America and Snyder conspired to force him and the other minority partners to sell their shares in the Washington Redskins franchise at a much lower value for the purpose of boosting the income received by Snyder and then the income to Bank of America in the form of transaction fees. So, and the general gist of it is basically that the bank hid a $55 million line of credit to Snyder, didn't disclose it to the minority partners, sort of coerced them into selling the team, their shares of the team at a much lower valuation, which is true. They bought it at a much lower valuation, and Snyder turned right around 5 minutes later and sold the franchise for. And so all of this will come out. These are the kind of lawsuits that are very, very, very complicated. I haven't read the petition yet. I'll have more, but this is interesting. So we'll have more on IJB and probably on this show.
For those who don't remember, when they were forced to sell the minority share to Snyder, they got about $800 million for roughly half of the franchise.
It comes out to $3 million. Their valuation is $3 million. Snyder sold it for $6 million. That's the bottom line.
Billion
with a B, right?
Yeah, $3 billion.
So if you split up the delta by 40% and then split that up 3 ways, that's where the $75 million comes from.
Yeah. And Rothman owned a very small percentage of that.
Together, they own 40%. So 40% of the difference, which is $3 billion, then they put that into Rothman's share, and then that's $75 million.
Because I think Rothman of that 40% only owned like 10.
Yeah, whatever the number was, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of math that Steve's gonna have to look at.
It's not. I'm more interested in the legal arguments. The math is easy.
Yeah, I know. But you also like the math. Don't lie.
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm good at the math, though. I can do that in my head.
Yeah. Once you see the numbers, it's very. Even I can do that math. It's very easy math.
And you're not a very smart person, as we know.
Yeah.
I'm just.
All right, that should.
That's not saying much from me now, Steve. You're saying he's not very smart. Wow.
I'm just kidding, both of you. I'm just joking.
It's fine. All right, guys. That should cover us this week. Tune in next week as we finally wrap up the season.
Thank God.
Yeah. This has been a slog, folks. This one's. At least we're not doing two a week now.
Yeah. Because that's where we'd really be struggling. I like to point out, to toot my own horn, that I'm going to be closest in the season prediction. No matter what happens, I have won our season prediction contest.
Right, by going very low. But
yes.
even you went over.
I did. I think I had 6-11 is what I had.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Hey, if they win out, you're right.
They're not going to win out.
I know. Don't win out, please. Please don't win out.
Can you imagine they won out and ruined their draft position? It'd be funny. You have to admit.
Well, luckily they would still probably get like that good tight end from Georgia or something, but that's not
solve every problem.
Yeah. All right, guys, we will see you all next week. Bye.